You're listening to the Super League show, and this is SimNews.TV. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first episode of the Super League show for 2017. Jake Sanson here as we get underway for the new 2017 season to talk all things GPVWC Super League, and it's going to be a really exciting season, of course. And no surprises, we are joined in the studio, as always, by Benny and Kacper. Hello, chaps. How are we doing?
Hello. How are we doing?
Yep, all looking good for a new season then. Finally, we're going to wipe the cobwebs off the GPVWC Super League and get ourselves back into a brand new season. And already, early signs indicate that we are going to be in for an even more exciting run for the championship than we saw in 2016. And I'm not sure it can get even, well, I'm not sure how we could do more excitement than David Vidok versus Eris Masculi. It was quite tough at the end of last year. But I have a feeling there's going to be a bit more to it than that. We could have an interesting one, Benny.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was a really close run thing at the end of the season. There was a lot of drama over it. And the new cars this year looking really good. They're so much faster, so much more grip, already providing a lot of spectacle in the pre-season stuff. So looking really good.
And it's almost quite ironic, really, Kacper, that we are talking about, the switch and transition to new cars, almost in line with the way that Formula One is going through a bit of a rule change as well. The rule change is not quite the same, but it's almost like we're symmetrical at the moment. It's quite nice little symbiotic relationship there with Formula One.
Yes, I really enjoyed it. And we actually discussed that in the young drivers test, and I'm really glad to see them going that way. It's going to be interesting to see Super League be up there again in the speed, and because we were getting quite close with SC getting close in pace, and now it's going to be a big jump, and many people will actually really, really want to move up to this absolute pinnacle of GPVWC.
Fantastic. Well, it's been quite a while since the fireworks died down in Brazil, and a lot has changed. So let's talk a little bit about the lineups and the engine choices for 2017. We'll start with Adonis, Ascari Cantonen, and Fran Lopez on the squad. And they've gone for the Talos engine. That's an interesting choice.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, Talos is one of the new suppliers this year. They've come in to replace Potentia, who left sort of midway through last year when Midnight left. So new engine, obviously, there's a bit of an unknown there with Adonis. It's quite a surprise. I would have thought they would have stuck with Valiant, obviously a successful engine from last year. But changes can bring good things out of that one. Fran Lopez looked really fast last year. He was really on top of his game towards the end of the year for Red Archer. And Oscar Canton comes back. He's been around the league for a while. Been off for best part of a year with injury, I think. So it's nice to see him back. And interesting to see what his pace is really, because we haven't seen him in much Super League machinery recently. So that will definitely be an interesting one to watch.
Okay, so we move on from Adonis to talk about the German team, Green Stripes Racing, with their Trinity engine unit. That could be a really interesting one, Kacper. With Matt Varley and Matt Beavis on the team, there could be some fireworks there.
Yes, I've seen Matt Beavis do really well in the Independent Series last season. Really some good pace in the Atlantic Series, if I recall correctly. And going for the Trinity engine, if I recall correctly, that is an engine that was there last year. So a bit safer choice than something like Talos, and is one of the two Trinity engines on the grid. And Matt Varley, I'm not exactly familiar with this driver, but it's going to be very interesting for GSR.
Indeed it is. Well, there's only one other team on the grid other than Adonis that has gone with the Talos power unit for 2017, and that is Hawkeye Racing, based up in the Lake District, of course, with Alex Cooper and Tobias Olsen on the driving strength. Benny, what do we think of this lineup?
Well, with Talos, obviously, they're developing the engine at Hawkeye. They've come in as a replacement for Potentia and Midnight. And they had to do something drastic. Last year was pretty shambolic for Hawkeye. They're used to being up at the top of the league, fighting for podiums and race wins. And last year they found themselves as backmarkers, which really wasn't good for the team.
Hawkeye very much the McLaren of Super League.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, they had a really shoddy season last year. I think they had 11 drivers at one point, going through 11 drivers. So to come in with Alex Cooper, very fast driver, spent a good amount of time at Midnight and CSG over the last few years. He's going to be lightning quick. Only question mark I have over him is he can be a bit hard on his tyres at times. And Tobias Olsen was a really promising talent from Super Cup last year over Ice Cold Racing. So interested to see what he can do. Obviously developing the engine as well should give them a bit more freedom in what they do in terms of engine development. Just something to differentiate themselves from the rest, because they've really got to improve for this year.
Absolutely. Well, we move on to another of the English teams, to Kernau Sport, which are based over at St Austell, with the Valiant Power Unit, and they have got Bart de Vos and Bens Zubenek on the driving front this year. Kacper, that could be a very interesting lineup there, those two. Maybe one of the dark horses for the season?
I do think so, actually. Engine with a very, very safe choice of very good engine throughout the last season. Bart de Vos keeping his place in Kernau, and he's shown some pace in Independent Series. He's been a bit down on pace in certain races at Super League, but he has shown some really, really good finishing positions in some races. I think maybe Austria last year. I can't fully remember, but he has shown himself in certain areas, and definitely a driver that to watch out for. And Zupanek, I've heard really good things, and I would really hope to see for Kernau do really well this season again.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to have another strong challenge from the Hungarians in GPVWC Super League this year. We'll talk about that a little bit later, of course. We move on to the South Africans, the Mad Cape Racing team with their Valiant Power Unit. We don't know their full lineup yet. We only know Michel de Jong at the moment. What do we think about that second seat, Benny? Who would you reckon that could go to?
Well, it's been a very quiet driver market this year, so I wouldn't like to guess, really. There's not many people around on the market at the moment. It's a bit late. One would think, given their ties, to various teams around, I think they do work quite closely with Vodball, obviously with the Valiant engine. Maybe they could draft someone in from their FSR operations or something. Mitchell de Jong, he was alright in FC last year. Mad Cape, one of the only teams to have done the double jump, really, coming from the lowest tier all the way to the top, with a really strong season in Formula Challenge. So interested to see what de Jong can do. As I say, he's an alright talent, and they've got James Johnson at the moment as a test driver. We don't know if that's confirmed. I do know he's racing for Deltec in Super Cup. But again, he can maybe offer some experience and advice and maybe help try and find that second driver, because they need one pretty soon.
Yeah, they certainly do. Of course, we can't really look at the lineup for 2017 without looking at the team that hosts the reigning champion, the Nordion Racing Norwegian-based operation with their Martex power unit. And this one has all the makings of another strong charge for 2017. The reigning champion, David Feidock, Florian Geyer, the German, and even on the reserves bench, they've got a talented racer in the Swiss driver, David Junt. This one, well, it's not as clear-cut as this, is it really, Kacper? Because you could say going in, they're favourites again, but I think they're going to have a tough job of it.
I honestly think that David is going to struggle quite a bit against Fran now being in a very top team. Nordstrom is going to be trying to possibly bank on Feidock's fantastic tire management and that he has shown in certain races last season. And Florian Geyer as well, just fantastically in the race itself. Their race pace can be fantastic. But I think Feidock is just missing that little bit of a spark in terms of his actual outright speed. But in terms of consistency, he's just out there. And as you said, David Junt, fantastic driver in many respects in terms of, especially for testing, I'd say that he is a driver that can definitely help that team as well. And of course, they have their own engine, which is always a bit of an advantage considering they know exactly what's coming up.
Absolutely. So we have to say going in that they could be the ones to watch again, but there's going to be some strong challenges elsewhere. We move on to the team from Greece, based over in Rethymno. It's the Red Archer Virtual Racing team, of course, with their Valiant Power unit. We were going to see Agustin Canapino, the Argentine racer, but dramatically, he has decided to retire from Super League going into the 2017 season. So it means ultimately there, Benny, that the Australian Daniel Benefield needs to find a new teammate.
Yes, he does. That was a bit of a shock, really. We were expecting Augustin to return. He had a bit of a patchy season at Vodball last year. I know he was struggling with some internet issues, so maybe that was partially the case. He's also races in real life, so could be time commitments as well. But again, losing a driver this close to the season is not helpful at all. We're mid pre-season flow, drivers are getting used to the cars, how it's going to be upgraded, their full development path. To lose a driver so soon is really not helpful, and that could set them back a bit. And again, their test driver isn't technically confirmed. We do have Thomas Hinton there at the moment, but I've seen nothing to confirm that. It's been very much a low-key sort of appointment. The one thing they do have going for them is they're still with the Valiant engine again. They used that last year, obviously tried and tested engine, and they were also very strong with their development rate last year. They had a brilliant development rate towards the end of the season, arguably one of the best cars towards the end of it. So it's going to be an interesting one to see how they start the season, but hopefully they can sort of pick it up pretty quickly.
Yeah, we really want to see that team do well from the off. We'll talk about Storm Racing team now, the Romanians from Cluj-Napoca, the Valiant-based power plant. Obviously, it's going to be really interesting to see how Adrian McNaughton and Emmanuel Gasgela do. They've been very strong recently in the Masters Series. Emmanuel Gasgela almost a champion in that, of course, Kacper. And that's, well, it was frustrating in Adelaide that things didn't quite go his way, but that's going to give him confidence going into 2017, surely.
Yes, and we've seen a lot of pace. I recall very clearly in Mexico, the closing parts of the season, Gasgela was really, really on it, really had the pace, and in Super League in general, I think he's getting better and better, and he will be one of the drivers to really watch this season. I think if he can improve his tire management, which he has had some struggles with, I think he could be one to watch. And Adrian McNaughton, and luckily I don't think he'll be too much of a challenger. I don't recall him ever really being up there, but who knows, maybe he can improve, and that would be very good to see. Menno Klont as a test driver is also a really, really good driver as far as I can tell. He has worked with a couple teams last year. I think one of them was Woods Racing, if I correctly. I could be wrong. But yeah, Valiant engine also is going to definitely help them, considering, again, the engine managed by Vodbull is really, really strong.
And there are two more teams in GPVWC Super League this year that are going to be with the Valiant Power Unit. One of them is based all the way down under in Sydney, Australia. It's the Street Fighter Racing Systems team, of course, with the Englishman Ben Horrell and the Croatian David Francic. Now, this is actually a bit of a dark horse team as well, Benno, because we know from experience that Francic, when he's got a good car underneath him, he's like lightning.
Certainly, yeah. He had some really good moments in Super Cup last year. Obviously, Street Fighter, one of the teams that moved up. Look really good, really strong. And Ben Horrell on his day can be good. Maybe he wasn't with the best car last year at GSR. It was hard to tell, what kind of talent we're dealing with there. So hopefully, moving over to Street Fighter, he can really show himself and try and move into like a higher drive, maybe a works drive or something. And being powered Valiant again. Again, it's a tried and tested engine. We know it's going to be quick. We know it's going to be developed well. So positive signs coming out of Street Fighter. Definitely up there for maybe a midfield challenge.
Yeah, I can see that definitely being the case. The last of the Valiant Power Units is the Liverpool-based Vodbull Racing Team, the squad that, for me, has one of the best talents coming into the new season. Well, two of them, actually. The Dutchman, Rudy van Buren, and the Estonian, fresh off the back of winning the Masters Series in the closed season, Risto Kacper. Now, this man, Kacper, at the moment, is on the crest of a wave, and he could carry this straight into Super League.
Yes, Risto has shown extraordinary pace at the end of last season. If I recall correctly, it was I think he took a little bit of a break, and then suddenly when he came back, he was just on the top of his game, and he's been carrying that. And if he can carry that, he can very much challenge, and he could be one of the contenders for a championship. Rudy, I think, is going to be a very good teammate as well, and he may even challenge Risto. We'll see how he can manage his pace as well. But he is known to be very, very quick as well. And of course, they manage their own engine. They manage the engine of so many teams. And I don't think there's anything going to be ever wrong with the Valiant engine as well.
Okay, so that's the Vodbull Racing Team going to take the challenge to Nordsjön. The Wouters Automotive Team, the boys from Belgium, that could be a really interesting lineup there as well for the Wouters Martex team. And it's the two Hungarians that we know and love, Jurgo Baldi and Daniel Jaranku. Now, Benny, this is going to be an exciting season for these two because they're really starting to click, probably even more than they have in previous seasons.
Exactly, yeah. Having two drivers from the same nation as well really does help with that sort of inter-team well, I'm not sure what the word would be. They just work really well together. I guess, there's communication straight off the bat there.
Can I throw a posh word in there and use the word symbiotism? Symbiotism.
Yes, we'll go for symbiotism. I like
That's the longest word you'll hear on tonight's show, I promise.
But yeah, you're right there, though. That they're going to work really well together. Gergo has shown some brilliant pace in the Wouters last year. I think he spent a season at Hawkeye in 15. I think that rings a bell. But he's shown brilliant pace. Daniel Sharanku hasn't driven in Super League, I don't think. I recognise the name from FC a couple of years back, and when he was there, he did show some pretty good pace. And they've got Dennis Lind as a test driver as well. Now that is a really big steal. He is, of course, the Lamborghini Super Trofeo champion. Have someone of that talent as your reserve driver offering setup tips and advice is, any Super League team would kill for that. It's absolutely brilliant. And they're with Martex as well. Pretty good engine. It's the first time Martex have had a customer in 2 years, I think. So you'll see some working together there from Nordson and Wouters as they work to develop that Martex engine.
Absolutely. Well, there's last but definitely not least, it's the boys from Southampton, the all-English Woods Racing Squad with their Trinity Power unit. And what an interesting lineup this is, Kacper. Lewis Redshaw and Tom Jacobs with Matthew Churgwin as a test driver. That could be potentially very strong. They could be on the podium quite regularly.
They could be. If Woods just can get it down, and if Trinity engine is good enough, I think both Thomas and Lewis can just outright do it. At least point scoring, high or top 10 finishes, I think, are generally on the books. And I would have thought that if they can play it well, they're going to be fighting it up there. But that's going to be really just down to development. And if Lewis can, I think he had a bit of issues throughout his season last year, so hopefully he can overcome those.
Absolutely. Well, that's pretty much your lineup for the 2017 season. Still a few vacancies to fill then, most notably at the Mad Cape Racing team, and of course the potential of that spare seat going begging at Red Archer Virtual Racing team. So we'll probably have some news of that before we get to the first round on March the 9th at Albert Park. But let's talk a little bit about how this 2017 season is going to go. Benny, who do you think is going to be particularly strong in the 2017 season? Who's your money on?
Oh, that's a tough question because there's so many good drivers this year. It's one of the best fields we've seen in a while. And there's a great caliber of team as well there. You do argue it's hard to look past David Fiduk repeating what he did last year. I know Nordson spent the best part of the whole summer break last year just working on tyre analysis to get up to that speed and to get up to the front, and we suddenly saw them pitting one stop less than everybody else because they knew how the tyres worked. If they can put that work in this year with the new tyres, they could be doing brilliantly. Fran Lopez at Adonis, well, he's always really quick. As long as he can work on tyre management, then and Adonis haven't overspent from last year. I think that's key to point out because they developed so much last year. As long as they've got the resources to support a title challenge, that'll be really good as well. Hawkeye, Resurgence, Alex Cooper definitely could be up there. And again, you've got the Vodball lineup who either one of Rudy or Risto could win that because they're just so amazingly fast.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to talk about to a certain extent, Kacper, because we have to discuss 2017 with the absence of the Masculi Francesconi powerhouse. Now, they've gone, and obviously somebody's got to step in and fill that void. So, on paper, I mean, who's that going to be? Do you think it's going to be Florian Gaia? Do you think it's Emmanuel Gasgella? Could even Redshaw bring a bit more to the table?
I honestly, at this point, I am a bit together with Ben in terms of I think Fran Lopez just has it. He has had the absolute pace at the end of the last season with that Red Archer, and he is the one to absolutely watch. And Emmanuel Gaxella, as you said, I think he's going to be the one to watch. Storm Racing, just the underdog nearly of this possibly of this season. We'll see about that. Obviously, Risto Caput, you cannot count out that ball of his. And I mean, we can just look across the entire grid. David Frančić, I think he's going to possibly do very well if he can just pull it out. There are so many very fast drivers, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see. with the cars changing so much in terms of how much grip they have, in terms of the tires, that I think it's going to be unpredictable. And of course, we just can't count out the current champion.
Absolutely. So it is going to be tough. Now, this is the difficult question because people are going to come and hang us at the end of the year if they end up doing well and we put them down here. But it's a tough question to ask again, but who do you see as being not ones that will fail necessarily in 2017, but who's going to have an uphill climb, do you think? Who's going to have to work the hardest?
It really is a tough one because the grid this year is brilliant. You'd have to say Mad Cape and Red Arch at the moment aren't looking too promising, given they don't have a full lineup. Because we just don't know that second driver for each, and we can't put confidence in them doing well if we don't know who's going to fill that seat. Could be they bring in someone crazy fast from elsewhere that nobody knows about, and they go off and win a load of races. Totally happen. But equally, they could struggle. They have to pull in someone who's maybe not as good as they'd want, and that could cost them. It could drop them vital points, and they could find themselves at the end of the table. I mean, it's the level of the field is so good this year that it's really hard picking out who's not going to do as well. I'm struggling here looking at it. There's so many good drivers. There's maybe a few question marks over GSR's lineup just because we don't know them that much. Again, they could be really fast. Adrian McNaughton, maybe he hasn't shown the speed of Gashella, but then equally they've had a long-standing partnership as teammates, so that could help them out there. I mean, again, it's just so hard, and with the added complexities of resources, we also have 3 tyre compounds this year we have to pick for every race. Someone could get it completely wrong, and there goes their race weekend. It's going to be. There's so many factors. That's what I'm looking for. There's so many factors that could totally decide this.
Yeah, I want to come to you, Kacper, on the point that was mentioned there by Benny brilliantly there. Mad Cape Racing and Red Archer. Now, obviously, one driver is confirmed at each of those teams. And in the case of Mad Cape Racing, you could say on paper that maybe James Johnson could be in the nod for the seat, although that's not confirmed that he's even testing at the moment. Similarly with Thomas Hintz, they've got him knocking around at Red Archer. But nothing is confirmed yet, and we've only got 3 weeks before the beginning of the season, 4 weeks actually before the beginning of the season. So at this late stage, how detrimental is that to a team's progress? How big a deal is that to be so uncertain of how the season's going to go at this late stage?
I think quiet. There are some drivers which would be able to get into that spot and be quite quick, but I think with how competitive this league is, I don't think there's a way that this is not going to be detrimental anyway. This is just a very, very difficult point to still be looking for drivers. And at this point, Red Archer and Mad Cape really don't look like they'll be in a very good spot. And you just are missing that one driver for testing all the time. And some of these drivers will just be driving these cars for the next 3 weeks or in the last 2 weeks, or I don't even know when they were properly released, but they'll be just driving and driving and driving and driving, but while these have just less drivers to do it. And honestly, if I was to say, Red Archer will be one of the teams that will be struggling if they also overspent, because they also had that massive dash of spending to do very well at the end of last season, so they could also be down in terms of development. And honestly, I'd also like to throw out that I think that Woods Racing may struggle, but that's just my own feeling on how I've seen Red Shaw do last season. And Jacobs, I've only seen a little bit of, so we're going to have to wait and see.
Absolutely. There's so many unknowns at this point, isn't it? It's quite a strange position for us to be in. But one thing we can talk about is preseason testing. Obviously, we've had 2 of the days so far. 2nd of February, we went to the Autodromo Enzo Edina Ferrari for Imola. And then, of course, on the 9th of February, we were at the Hockenheim Ring in Germany. So already there's some interesting signs, Benny. I mean, Imola was a difficult one because we had a lot of rain to contest with in the early stages, so not a great amount of data until the second half of testing really there. Hockenheim really gave us a bit of an indication, though, as to what kind of speed we can see from a couple of drivers.
Exactly, yeah. I think we sort of have to look past Imola's results because the problem was the start of the session was just so wet. Then it dried up a bit, and then enough of a rainstorm came in. So we're looking at about a 20-second spread in times from people who were doing their laps in the rain compared to the likes of Fran Lopez, who turned up at the last few minutes of the session to put in a qualifying lap. So we can't read too much from Imola. I mean, with Hockenheim, there's a bit more we can gather, but we have to remember people run on different fuel loads and different strategies. Obviously, the notable ones are the two Adonises at Hockenheim Ring. Fran Lopez up there on a 1:18.6. You've got Scurry Canton just 4/10 off him. Probably ultra soft quali laps, but that's still showing their pace, straight up there. And two green stripes up there. Matt Varley and myself is there as well. Again, both were sort of quali simulations, so not too far off. I think we should point out maybe a few people were sandbagging per se. We'd probably expect to see a bit more pace from the Vauballs, Risto and Rudy, who did the minimum laps. They literally just turned up, did one full stint on the hard tyres, and then went. So they're showing up as 5 seconds off, but we know they're not. We know they're way better than that, and they should be up with Lopez. So it's hard to tell from testing. Everybody runs different programs, and at the end of the day, everyone's there just to get the required R&D points to develop the car. People will do different things. I know personally the green stripes lot, we were experimenting with different tyres. So myself and Matt went out on the ultra softs for a bit. Matt Beasley went out and did more sort of soft tyre running. So you get such a different spread of sort of strategies across this. But yeah, there's definitely some noticeable times in there.
So it's an interesting position that we find ourselves in. Kacper, who really impressed you from the testing? Who was really, as far as you were concerned, a standout performer? Who impressed you?
Well, at the moment, if you're looking at times, I mean, as Ben said, the first one, I can't say a single thing. And the second one, obviously, I'm seeing Adonis high up there. But again, it's just, we can't really say much about out of testing. And I know that myself, it's just not, you cannot really tell what a person's pace is going to be out of just testing, especially if you're talking about people trying hard tires, as said here. But something that I'm just looking at right now, and that is absolutely crazy, is Daniel Chiranku in Wouters did 120 laps when everyone else did about 70 at Hockenheim Ring. So this is the kind of things that you'd be looking at, and how incredibly much he'll be working on that car. And if somebody's working this much, I think you really see that they want to do well, and they'll do everything they can. So I'll be really watching Daniel.
To jump in and play devil's advocate there, sorry, just to say, with that kind of high amount of laps though, they're spending loads on fuel for every testing lap they're doing now. The last time I checked, it's £300 per kilometre. So let's say Hockenheim Rings, it's about 5 kilometres, so round that up to, what's that, £1,500 per lap. Now if you're doing 60 extra laps than you should be, that's upwards of what, 70 grand? Probably.
It is, yeah.
You're spending. That's a lot.
So it's a lot. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's a lot of money to invest in that. I mean, what sort of, from that point of view, Kacper, I mean, is there anything to gain from spending that much in testing this early? I mean, where would they make the deficiency elsewhere in the season, do you reckon?
At this point, actually, that's a fair point. I didn't even think about that at that point. And I don't think that's quite worth it. Maybe going a few more laps, 10, 20 is still reasonable, but going 50, 60 laps more is, I don't think that that is going. It's still not the most money you can spend on something, but it is the money they'll be lacking in development later.
Yeah, well, it's tough, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, we're not racing at the Hockenheim Ring this year, so perhaps to put that much investment into something, Benny, they've got to have a trick up their sleeve. Their strategy is a perplexing one. I mean, we've got 2 more test sessions, again, at circuits we're not racing at this year, Sepang and Sakir. Why would you spend that much money on testing? What could you gain from spending that much this early?
There's not loads you can get unless they're trying out loads of different setup ideas. That's where you gain, by running laps around the same track where the rubber is going to be relatively consistent on the track. The conditions are going to be similar. So any changes you're trying, and if you feel a change in the car, it's down to a setup tweak or something. Equally though, one driver running that kind of extra laps isn't too bad. If you then have 3 drivers doing that for a team across all 4 tests, you're looking at not being able to afford an upgrade later on in the season, and you sort of then start to question, well, is it worth it? Is the extra setup knowledge and experience for the car worth it compared to, say, a 20% upgrade on the front wing or something that would actually help out with the raw pace of the car?
Yeah, it's definitely a difficult one. We'll have to read the odds and ends into that one. Potentially, we may find a few more answers when we go to Sepang at the end of the week. So we just don't know at this moment.
Definitely, yeah.
Let's talk a little bit just before we disappear about the calendar changes for 2017, because there are some significant ones. There's 3 races that are not going to be on the calendar for this year, Kacper. We're not going to go to Sakir. We're not going to go to Istanbul. And we're not going to go to Holland again. That's a real shame, because that's obviously going to get us back in for the German Grand Prix once again. But it's going to be interesting to see the absence of some of those key circuits from last year's battle.
Yes, and I personally have quite a few good memories from Istanbul myself. It's going to be a bit sad seeing that go, but I mean, we always have a track rotation. Every year is different, and Shakir, for example, would be my favorite personally. So, I think you just have to play by the rules. Every track is different. Every track you still have to learn. You still have to drive there. So while you may not enjoy some as much as the others, I think it's just something to get used to. And that's what happens in racing, and that's just how it is.
It's always amusing to a certain degree, though, Benny, some of the circuits that seem to be going in and out and shaking it all about almost. And, some of them that just seem to be a permanent staple on the calendar. I always find that element of GPVWC quite fascinating to observe over the last couple of years.
Definitely, I think it keeps the drivers on their toes, doesn't it? You've got to be prepared for any kind of change. And we've got some good additions this year. We bring back the Valencia Street Circuit.
I love that place. I do.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a brilliant place. It hasn't been in action for years, though. I've definitely, in the time I've been at GPV since 2013, it hasn't been used. So interesting to see that one come back. That obviously replaces Barcelona. Red Bull Ring moves up the calendar, and that's now the 5th race we go to. We've got China coming in for Bahrain, and China hasn't been used since 2014, I think.
2015, I think, was the last
2015,
time.
There you go. I stand corrected.
I'm getting better. I'm getting better as time goes on.
Yeah, you know more than me. And what else we've got coming up? We've got Singapore coming back, which comes back after a year break, and I love Singapore. Absolutely love it. So it's got its own vibe with, obviously, it being a night race and a street race at the same time. And it's a pretty big challenge for setup as well.
Yeah, I really do love Singapore. And I have to say, this is something that I'm going to become very unpopular with if I ever become a Formula One commentator with the FIA. I actually prefer Valencia to Catalunya. I think it's an absolutely awful circuit, Catalunya. But there we are. That's just me being controversial as the GPVWC season starts. Sorry, I'll just pack my bags and leave now. So that's pretty much all there is for this first Super League show of 2017. We're going to be back, of course, in a few weeks' time. A huge thank you to the panelists Benny and Kacper once again, as we'll do it all again in a few weeks' time, no doubt.
Definitely, yeah. Thanks for having us there.
No problem.
It was absolutely lovely.
Well, we're looking forward to a busy season, of course. Don't forget that on the 16th of February 2017, we're testing again the 3rd preseason test at the Sepang International Circuit. Sepang, GPVWC.com for all the details. Make sure you keep an eye on that. Of course, future shows here on SimNews.TV. Don't forget, of course, the Scrutineer is back at 10 p.m. on the 22nd of February, and Parker's Pit Stop returns on the 27th of February at 8 p.m. We'll be back the week after the first race, which is, of course, on the 9th of March, Albert Park, Melbourne. So do keep an eye on the streams. We'll try and keep you up to date with all the news as it happens. Who's going to take that second seat at Mad Cape and at Red Archer? Well, we'll find out at Albert Park, won't we? I'm Jake Sanson. Thank you very much to everybody for welcoming me to the GPVWC community. And from all of us here on the Super League show, we'll see you in March.